Hey, welcome back everyone. You're watching Snowcat Designs. My name's Cole if you're new to the channel. We're working on our Snowcat project, and today we're gonna be making some custom dies to stamp out our square tubing grousers. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, that's okay. We're gonna go ahead and explain it to you. All right, well, if you've been following this build, you'll know in the last video, we finally got this thing fired up and that turbo diesel sounds awesome. I love it so much. That was a huge win. Engine's running, still needs some work there, but I'm changing gears. We're starting to move towards the powertrain. All right, so it being a Snowcat, this is gonna be a tracked vehicle. And the track design, like most Snowcats, is a track over tire design. Argo and Mudox use a very similar idea. We're gonna be running a piece of belting on the outside, a piece of belting on the inside, and then approximately every second spacing here, so about every 3 inches, there's gonna be a piece of steel tubing that connects from one belting to the other. So the type of grouser design I'm doing here, I'm gonna be using mild steel square tubing with some wear pads, but we're gonna do a drop center grouser, and there's a couple of reasons for that. What a drop center grouser is, it's gonna have the radius of this tire pressed into it so that it will come flat, radius over the tire, and then back down. And as they go around, the actual footprint of the vehicle on dirt or hard packed snow becomes much smaller, and that allows us to be a lot more maneuverable, and because it's a skid steer, steering will be significantly easier. Out in the mountains where they have 10, 20, 30 plus feet of snow, they run really wide tracks because they're trying to get absolutely as much flotation as possible. The machines are also very heavy. This machine is very light, and I don't live in an area where we get that kind of snow. We might see 5 feet, 6 feet total accumulation. So I really don't have to worry about the flotation as much as the bigger cats. So I've really settled on this grouser design. It's a lot more work to fabricate, but I think it's better suited to the terrain I drive in. It's gonna make, like I say, steering easier. The wear patches will be a bit better, and we'll have the flotation when we need it for when we get into deeper snow. The grousers basically are what keep the track together, but they also act as a chain. So we're gonna have a rear drive sprocket. Those grousers lock into the sprocket teeth, and that's how we actually propel ourselves forward. Alrighty, well, I think I've explained that well enough. Let's head back over to the CNC plasma table and we'll start talking about these dies we gotta make. So the dies I'm planning on making are gonna be what's called a laminated die. And the reason I'm doing that is because we need to bend 1 inch mild steel square tubing, and I don't have a means of cutting this shape out in 1 inch thick steel. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna cut 4 laminations out of 1/4 inch. We're gonna bolt all that together, and then we're gonna put these dies in my mechanical press brake, and fingers crossed it has the power to stamp these out. Now, a lot of the bends we're doing on here are not really tight radiuses, they're quite large, and the steel itself is fairly soft. I think my press brake is approximately 20 tons. When you're doing V-bending with typical set of dies, there's tonnage charts you can look up and find out how much tonnage you need to do to bend certain thicknesses and die openings of metal, and it's all done. Everyone, they know that. You can just look up the tonnage you need. This is very custom, so I don't really have the ability to look up the tonnage required. My first plan is going to be using this press brake. I do have a plan B if that doesn't work out, and plan C will be have to figure something else out. So let's go ahead. We're going to start knocking off some of this cutting, and we'll start putting it all together and see what we can do. All right, well, I've got 2 of each of these cut up, and I've just realized I made a mistake in my design. Would have been better if I only had 1 cut, but I'll go ahead and explain this to you. So if you haven't figured it out already, there's a bottom die, a top die. We'll put our piece of square tubing in, and then this comes and goes ka-chunk and squeezes it down. I designed this radius to match the curvature of the tire, and then I did an offset, and if you put these together, they're not identical because they shouldn't be. They should be 1 inch spacing perfectly when they're 1 inch away, which they are. So that's actually really good. The problem I had is when I drew my drawing, I put my offset to the top, which means that this is the shape of the top where the tire is supposed to be, but this is the actual shape. So I should have put the offset down here. Yeah, let's go take a look at the tire. As a good test, I mean, this is nice. That sits down into the tire just about absolutely perfectly. So measurements on getting the radius of the tire was bang on. So that's actually a good check. But if we look at the other die, the top die, it's gonna have a radius that's smaller than this, and it's the inside, the top die, that's really gonna be, needs to be the shape of the tire. So I put my offset to the wrong side. I'm gonna go back into the house, redraw this up, and yeah, these are ultimately kind of gonna be scrap, I guess. But that's okay, that's why I bought a half a sheet of steel. All right, we got all the pieces to the dies cut out now. The next step before we go bolting them together is going to be use the surface finisher. I want the surfaces nice and flat, no little burrs or anything like that. Then we'll go ahead, bolt them all together, line them up as best as we can. They're not perfect. They have little warps from all the heat of the cutting, but we'll bolt them all together, and then we'll go ahead and use the angle grinder and the surface finisher and just try and true up the die nice and even. I don't really care if it's not bang on. I'm not stamping out sheet metal. We're bending square tubing. It doesn't have to be that perfect. I think we have some wiggle room. Let's start bolting these together and hope everything lines up reasonably well. I've got a ton of 1/4 inch bolts. I'm buying them by the hundreds, so we should be good. Woohoo! Not too shabby. Oh yeah. Yes. Okay. Let's see what's on here. There you have it. It's a lower die. Not square at all, but clean it up. Now it's pretty warm, but that is the lower die. And yeah, looks pretty good. Okay, so then on to the top one. This one is a little different because it has to fit into the moving portion of the press brake. It needs to neck down, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. Okay, well, just like the bottom die, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up, true it up a bit, and then we'll be ready to test it out in the press brake. I really like it. I think it's going to work as long as the thing has enough tonnage, so we'll see. This is where keeping scraps comes in handy. If this works out, I can easily just weld a shim in permanently in here, so, but we'll do this as a test. Make sure that's sitting down. Go ahead, get the top die in. Alright, check the bottom. Okay, that looks really good. When I take the die out and put it back in, you know, I'll just be able to slide the top or the bottom around to line it up again. So something else you might be wondering here, and it's not necessarily the camera doing it, but you can see they drop down. I actually don't go flat, I go past horizontal. And the reason is when you're doing any bending, there's always spring back. So you have to overbend to get the angle you want. And I mean, there was nothing really to look up what I'm doing here. I believe I estimated and put about 4 extra degrees in to account for that spring back, just with, you know, my, just with the experience I've had, I thought that would be a fairly safe number. The other thing we can do if it's bending too much is we could just shrink the stroke a little bit and not completely bottom out in the dies, and that would leave the tail ends fairly flat. But we'll deal with that when the time comes. we're pretty much ready. I'm gonna need to put on a stop on the back side of the lower die. That way the tubing won't push out and we can put it in, and then we'll also put on an end stop. So everyone will be repeatable. That's gonna be a big thing here, is repeatability. So funny enough, just yesterday on one of my Facebook memories was a year ago, I bought this. I bought it at auction, I saw it, I knew exactly what I was hoping I could use it for, and we're gonna find that out today. I paid $325 for it. The thing is nearly 3,000 pounds of steel. It's a 20-ton mechanical press brake, and if it works, it's gonna pay for itself, plus just uses down the road. And I didn't figure that was risking a lot because it's probably worth that in scrap steel. So really couldn't go wrong. But I had a heck of a time getting it in my shop because I don't have anything to lift this. But yeah, it is three-phase. It's a three-phase 208. But you know, you can solve that for fairly low horsepower motors. You can buy cheap variable frequency drives, VFDs. I think I bought one for about $100. So 120 to three-phase 208, and it runs pretty good. So yeah, I think we're ready to cut up a chunk of steel, and let's test this out. Yeah, this is that saw. I don't know if you watched the video. I did a little bit of unboxing review video. I was in talks with Evolution for a little while. I knew I had thousands of pieces of metal to cut to build these tracks, and they agreed to send me one. So I figured I'd showcase it in some of the videos here. Right now I just have it set up on my workbench. I have a plan to make a really nice cut table on wheels with a storage area underneath for all my offcuts. I'll have the 14-inch metal chop saw, and then I'll also have my 12-inch wood chop saw spaced a little bit apart, and should be a really nice cut area. This winter, I plan on spending some time doing some projects. I'll video them of shop upgrades. I have a lot of good tools now, and I got to get this shop dialed in to be more efficient, because I'm, you know, just tripping over myself and wasting time. If we can get everything dialed in real good, then it'll make everything a little less painless. But let's go ahead. Let's get a piece of metal cut. Oh yeah, that thing's fast. Also, something I want to note here is there's no guards on this machine, and if this works well, I need to do a little bit of maintenance on it, grease some things up, and then I'll get all the guards on before we stamp out all these parts. But until I prove this, I don't feel like putting any time or energy into it. All right, I think I have this at its bottom, kind of dead center. Now I'm gonna go ahead and gotta crank this up and give us some clearance. All right, I think that's about where I'm gonna start. I guess we gotta fire this thing up, get it to the top. Let's test it. I sure hope this works. Ah! Yeah! Look at that. Okay, let's turn this off and take a closer look. Oh. Look at that. You know, sometimes you just don't know if something's gonna work, and it crushed in the tubing a little bit on the bottom. I kind of knew it was gonna do that. Anytime you start bending, it's gonna stretch metal in funny ways, and it's trying to compress metal on the insides of the bends, so it winds up having to cave it in a little. That's not bad. I would accept that just the way it is. Now, as a reminder, these grousers are going to be made up of 3 pieces. This is the main backbone that's going to bolt to the belting. There's going to be a piece of 3/8 steel that runs from about here to here, so it's going to cover that up, and that's going to be our wear strip. And then on the inside, there's going to be a 1/2 inch round bar that comes and acts as the wheel guides and also kind of bites into the tire a little bit. So yeah, there's a lot of pieces of metal, a lot of stamping, but that is just awesome. All right, here's the true test. Oh yeah. See, that's pretty close. Whoopsie. What are these for total length after the fact? Okay, those are 21 inches long, exactly. So that's what a 21-inch track is gonna look like. So what I've thought for here is I could either notch it a little, or we can put some flat bar and some Teflon, and that way if the track kind of wiggles a little bit or loosens off by accident, it's just gonna slap against Teflon, and the rubber's gonna be on the underside. But I don't know, looking at this, I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna have to go with a 20-inch wide track. Well, let's cut a piece of 20 and see what that looks like. Nice. Okay. Wear plate, here we come. Perfect. Well, there you go. It worked. Oh, sometimes I do surprise myself. I come up with ideas, don't know if they'll work, but pretty happy with that. It's not perfect. You can see the radius isn't quite what I need, so I'm gonna have to play with that a little bit. I'll try different stroke heights. We'll get that worked out. If I have to, I'll make, you know, a small different set of dies, but I don't think it'll come to that. And yeah, I'm really, really excited with how that's turning out. You know, I'm not even upset if there is a gap there per se. I'm gonna weld that on along here, and it'll either crush in over time, or it kind of just helps to aid in some traction. So I believe this is the 21-inch one. But again, that's what the tracks are going to start to look like. Cool. Well, there's a long ways to go. We got to make the round bar tire guides, and then we need to make some special punch dies to punch out all the belting. So we're gonna leave that for some future videos. Well, I couldn't be more pleased with how that worked out. I mean, I surprised myself. I really didn't know if it would work. It worked really well. I didn't have the motor at full RPM on one of those, the stamps, so it hesitated a little bit. The other one I did full RPM, and it had all the tonnage I needed to press that 1-inch square tubing into the shape. I'm gonna leave that video there. I think we accomplished some more things. We checked off some boxes. And in the future videos to come, you're gonna see some more jigs getting made, some stamping jigs for all that belting. Then I gotta invite some family and friends over, because this is gonna be a extreme labor of love building these tracks, and we'll get it knocked out. So stay tuned for more videos. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.